The story begins in the 1980s, in Carlsbad, California, at a company called Angel Studios, founded by a man named Diego Angel in 1984.
Lo llamo Angel Studios porque al gringo, al americano, le daba mucha dificultad pronunciar Ángel. Entonces decían Ángel. Por eso lo puse Angel Studio en inglés, que es la misma palabra, la misma cosa.
The company wasn't initially known for video games, but for 3D work in films and music videos. Diego founded the company as a work-for-hire studio producing 3D graphics. The company found early success working on the 1992 film The Lawnmower Man.
En esa época no había 3D, era 2D. En el último semestre del colegio me llegó una conferencia de Computer Graphics. Oye, ¿y esta vaina qué es? Computer Graphics. Y de curiosidad me fui y se me abrió los horizontes, se me abrió el mundo.
And Peter Gabriel's Kiss the Frog music video, which won an award for Best Special Effects in a Video at the 1994 MTV Music Awards.
Well, to keep things moving, we've condensed the next half hour of awards into 60 seconds. Yay! It's going to go by really fast, but if you watch carefully, you will see a lot of, exposed genitals. So let's take a look.
Best Special Effects, Brett Leonard and Angel Studios for Peter Gabriel, Kiss That Frog.
According to Angel, he founded the company around a philosophy of 3 Ps: passion, patience, and perseverance. It wasn't about taking on everything offered his way, but rather projects that showcased his team, his technology, and the caliber of both. Angel told Polygon in an interview that money was not the first thing that went through my mind. I wanted to build a company as an entrepreneur based on the know-how, based on what we can give. I knew the money would come. Angel Studios' transition into game development came more or less from chance. In the early 90s, it was working with tech giant Silicon Graphics, making demos for its high-end computers in exchange for those computers. It was this work that turned the tables for the company, leading towards game development.
The need they have for extra power, extra software features, and extra throughput is just intense and amazing.
To be able to produce high-impact games, you need to have more brains on the game.
Developers don't have the best tools. They can't develop games really quickly. They can't preview what the game should look like.
Angel told Polygon that Mr. Takeda, that did the technology for Nintendo, he saw our demos. He said, "Fuck, who are these guys?" They said a little company called Angel Studios in San Diego. He called me right away. He said, "Can I be there at 9 in the morning the following day?" I said, "Yeah, come over." He came, and 3 days later Nintendo signed us as their technical partners for the launching of the N64. In February 1995, Nintendo announced that Angel Studios would be part of a Dream Team, a group of development studios for its then up-and-coming Ultra 64 console, which were 10 third-party studios that Nintendo chose to make games for the system. DMA Design was also part of this group, and the studio that would later become Rockstar North.
Nintendo, the world's leader in video games, has joined forces with Silicon Graphics, the world's leader in visual computing, to introduce the most exhilarating, breathtakingly realistic 3D video entertainment ever witnessed. Project Reality.
Howard Lincoln, who was chairman of Nintendo of America at the time, said this in a news release. Angel Studios is recognized around the world as a leading creator of amazing three-dimensional graphics and real-time environments. Their award-winning work in music videos, motion pictures, and commercials will transfer nicely to the video game industry, in particular to our powerful 64-bit system. Using Nintendo's deal as a driving force, Angel Studios shifted to making video games, though it didn't just limit itself to Nintendo products. First, it worked on the 1996 Sega Saturn game Mr. Bones, contributing art and cutscenes.
And the only purity there is evil.
And for Nintendo, the team developed the entirety of the 1998 sports game Major League Baseball featuring Ken Griffey Jr. and its 1999 sequel, Ken Griffey Jr.'s Slugfest.
Safe!
It also worked for Microsoft on the 1999 racing game Midtown Madness. Angel said one key to the studio's success was working well with Japanese publishers. At the time, he said studios in the East didn't trust studios in the West and vice versa. I was the only company in video games, the only studio in those days, that was working and getting along with the Japanese, adding that not being American himself probably helped, because Americans can be closed off at times. When you're outside the United States, you're open to other cultures other than American.
Yo era la única compañía de videojuegos en esa época de Estados Unidos que trabajaba con Nintendo. Manejé muy bien a los japoneses y pues yo me aparecía ya con mis 2 botellitas de tequila.
This ability to bridge the gap and to work well with high-profile Japanese companies earned Angel Studios a contract that changed the course of the company forever: the Nintendo 64 port of Resident Evil 2, which was released in 1999.
Lock the door. Turn out the lights. Pretend it's just a nightmare. The most intense survival game ever created. Resident Evil 2. Now for Nintendo 64.
Stuart Spilkin, who was a producer on both Resident Evil 2 and Red Dead Revolver, said, "We were the first, at least I was told, the first developer outside of Japan to work directly with Capcom Japan. A team of 9 developers at Angel Studios was able to get all of Resident Evil 2, which originally shipped on 2 discs when it debuted on the PlayStation 1 console, into a 64-bit cartridge for the N64. Capcom was so impressed with Angel Studios' work that they later approached the developer about something different, a new game, a new IP." According to former Angel Studios team members, Yoshiki Okamoto, then Capcom's chief operating officer and producer of many of the company's games such as Resident Evil and Street Fighter, approached the team about wanting to do a single-player game called SWAT, which was a third-person shooter where the player controlled different tactical team members, each with a unique set of abilities, switching between them as they wished. Stuart Spilkin said that the original concept was there's a single building, and you have a SWAT team of 7 different characters with different abilities and equipment. And you kind of have to go through the same scenario over and over in different ways. So we went with that for a while. Then Okamoto's idea shifted. At one point it's supposed to be like a carnival on an island taken over by robots. Sort of the same SWAT team concept. You have to go in and kill all the robots, but we never actually did anything with it. It was just an idea at the time. A little while later, the concept went through one more big change. It became a Western. Okamoto, who had previously worked on the 1985 Western arcade shooter Gunsmoke, had expressed interest to the team about wanting to do another Western, after seeing the movie Blind Man, according to a video on a YouTube channel called People Make Games. Spilkin said the developers replied with enthusiasm, interested in exploring a genre that hadn't seen too much in games at that time. Okamoto was really into Westerns. He would always say, I've always wanted to do another Western game. He would say, who better to do it than with an American developer? Because you guys know Westerns, right? And we're like, yeah, sure, we know Westerns. Angel said, there were no Western games. There were no cowboy games. It fascinated us, the idea of the horse and the shooting. Before that, it was wars and shooting and this and that, but there was no shooting between cowboys. So we said, let's do it.
Fue la introducción de un caballo, ¿no? De cowboys. Y no teníamos idea la dificultad que era programar un biped, 4 patas. Fue complicadísimo, pero salió adelante. Fue el primer cowboy juego y le fue bien.
Angel Studios twisted the acronym SWAT to take on a different meaning for the in-game crew, calling it Spaghetti Western Action Team, and the prototype for Red Dead Revolver was born. Darren Batter told Polygon it was bright, hot, sunny, glary, but still deserted and dusty. It was kind of like the first time you've seen that in games. I grew up in California, so I basically lived and breathed that environment all my life. So I knew I wanted to try to get out of it. And it was enjoyable to hear people go, yeah, we want more of this, more dust, more dirt, more grime, more grit. A year or so into development, Capcom sent over some of its internal developers to oversee the game. Akira Yasuda, who was famous for designing Street Fighter II character Chun-Li, came in to oversee the game as an art director. Under Yasuda's direction, Revolver had more of a fantasy vibe to it, as developers recall. It was more exaggerated, more magical. Being based in America, Angel Studios knew what a typical Western looked like. Batter said that the Japanese stuff wasn't always on the same page, and that some of Yasuda's character designs, though good, left some developers scratching their heads. A designer at the time told Dominic Craig of People Make Games that some of Yasuda's influences for Revolver's characters were the developers at Angel Studios itself. For example, he says that the character Pig Josh is named after lead designer Josh Needleman, and Javier Diego named after the company's CEO.
All the characters are basically designed on people in the studio. This is sort of how much of a kind of piss take Red Dead Revolver was, really. Mr. Kelly, who's the character that you fight at the end of the game, is based on Michael Kelly. He's the lead engineer.
I wouldn't be too cocky, bounty hunter. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time.
Perry, who's one of the characters that you fight, is Chris Perry, the particle artist.
Damn it! I've almost run dry. Okay, Swift, I've had enough of you now.
You can't quite tell if it's homage or if they're just being a bit mean.
Capcom came up with the name Red Dead Revolver, which Akamoto said Naoto Tominagi came up with, thinking it'd be fun to play with two rhyming words, red and dead, but it didn't make much sense to the people at Angel Studios. Spilkin said, "We tried to put stuff in the game to make the name make more sense, like naming the character Red and having his hand burned so his hand was red."
Here's why he's got a why has he got a bandage on his hand? They didn't really, so it's like, okay, in the first level, they come and shoot his family, his dad's gun's in the fire on the floor, he grabs it, picks it up, it burns his hand like Indiana Jones, right, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it leaves an imprint of the handle, so he always knows, oh, the other guy, who's got the gun, the other gun, is who killed my father. So anyway, and we built out the script.
Differing work ethics were another obstacle that Angel Studios developers didn't understand about Yasuda and the Capcom crew, who rarely left the office. Yasuda also surprised people with his sleeping habits. Bader said he dedicated virtually every waking moment to working on the project while he was here. He literally slept under his desk at Angel Studios. He just would stay there for 24 hours, 7 days a week. It was really just kinda odd. These cultural differences contributed to a rocky development for Revolver under Capcom. According to Angel Studios team members, language barriers led to a lot of work being done by Angel only to be thrown out by Capcom. Angel would build entire levels, Spilkin said, and for reasons unclear to those at the studio, Capcom would trash them. As development issues piled up, Spilkin said that the studio ended up in danger of missing milestones. And because Angel Studios was an independent developer working on a contract for Capcom, missing milestones meant missing paychecks, which only led to more problems. Akamoto himself reflected what Angel Studios developers were saying, in that revisions and alterations were happening throughout the entire project. Development wasn't exactly what you call smooth. You know, as a company, we can't release something that we don't feel good about, so there's all sorts of tumult throughout the entire process. This seemed to be a one-sided relationship where Capcom called all the shots and Angel did what it was told. It wasn't working and it didn't make the release of Revolver any more viable. According to Spilkin, Capcom's development philosophy was different from what Angel Studios was used to. At Angel, development was more collaborative and ideas could come from anywhere. Spilkin said, "I don't know if they started it this way. It's hard to say because of the language, but it got to a point where they were just like, we don't really want to hear your ideas. We're just going to tell you what to do and we want you to do it. You know, these are all really smart, talented guys, and part of the enjoyment of spending so much of your life making video games is you get to exercise some creative freedom. When you're in an environment where you can't do that, it becomes stifling." In March of 2002, Capcom finally unveiled Red Dead Revolver in an IGN article that talked briefly about the game's premise as well as a possible release window. Even though Capcom made its official release, many of the people behind the scenes wondered if the game would actually be finished. Spilkin said there's no measurable forward progress made on the game, and that Capcom continued to have ideas, scrap ideas, and start over on large chunks of it. Spilkin said that was one of the hardest jobs I would say I had in the industry. We'd already been working for several years on the game, and there was a lot of really good stuff there. There was stuff we disagreed with pretty strongly, but overall there was all the pieces there that you put together and make a game and ship it. But we felt like we would never get there. Outside of Capcom and Red Dead Revolver was one of Angel Studios' biggest clients, Rockstar Games, who at the time had been developing the Midnight Club and the Smuggler Run series in particular. Jamie King, who was a Rockstar co-founder and former vice president of development, told Polygon, "We loved Diego. We loved Midtown Madness. We were making Grand Theft Auto 3, and here were two games we were obsessed with in the office. One was Counter-Strike, I think it was beta 1.6 or whatever version that was. The other was Midtown Madness on PC. To the point some people would have steering wheels, and at lunchtime we would have multiplayer Midtown Madness racing sessions. Just like people now do with HQ, that app. And because of that, that's how we found Angel Studios." Around the time Red Dead Revolver was struggling under Capcom, Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City were changing the industry and making Rockstar a lot of money in the process. It was releasing new games at what King described as a relentless rate. It was also buying up some of its development partners as well. Behind the scenes, Diego Angel was preparing to sell his company. It is unclear if it was the bad relationship with Capcom that led to this, or if there was something else behind it. But it looked like a match made in heaven. He was looking to sell, and Rockstar had their eye on Angel Studios and its potential. Angel befriended the House brothers, and he said that they were weird guys and that they liked tequila and other things.
A ellos los conocí en E3 y también fue un amor a primera vista.
Angel said he talked to a few companies about selling his studios, such as Microsoft, Activision, and Rockstar. Out of all those he talked to, Rockstar was the only one to give him the freedom he wanted. While working with Microsoft on Midtown Madness, Angel said that the company was too strict on what could be in the game. Rockstar, however, had no issues with what he wanted. Diego said, "We couldn't run over pedestrians in Midtown Madness, and there couldn't be any accidents, there couldn't be any wrecks. And Rockstar was pitching hard to do games with us, and I went to them and said, 'Would you allow me to do this? Would you allow me to do this and this?' They said, 'We will go even farther. You can kill, do whatever the fuck you want.'" Before Rockstar purchased the company, the team would visit Angel Studios several times a year to see what the team was working on. Knowing that a Western was being worked on somewhere in the studio, Batter recalls piqued Hauser's interest, especially Sam. Batter said they couldn't really technically come and see what we were doing because we were working with another publisher. But I remember Sam and Dan saying, "Man, we would walk down the hall and wanted to come in there and see what the fuck you guys were doing with the Western, because we've always wanted to do a Western." Dan Hauser said to IGN, "The one that always caught our eye was this cowboy game that looked very good. At the time it looked visually spectacular, but also speaking to the management guys there, it was a complete mess. It didn't really exist as a game." With the Hausers wanting to make a Western and the development of Red Dead Revolver going nowhere under Capcom, Diego Angel wanted to sell, and Rockstar made an offer. But Angel didn't bite. Angel said, "I remember they made me the offer, and I said to the owner of Rockstar, I said, 'Thank you very much, it was very nice of you, we'll talk.' And I never called back." Angel says, "He called me back in a week. You haven't called me back." And I said, "Why? For that offer? I don't need to call you back. They were lowballing me."
Me llamó Sam y yo le dije, "Sam, es que es una oferta, pues que yo no voy a la compañía por una oferta de esas." Entonces ahí comenzó la negociación. Súbale un poquito.
Rockstar then returned with a new offer, one that, as Angel put it, he couldn't refuse. King said that buying up a company like Angel, one that had already been developing multiple games for Rockstar, just made sense from a business perspective. When collaborating with a third-party developer on a series doing well like Midnight Club was, buying a developer helps build the franchise. King said, "Ultimately, it scales the headcount and grows their company profit. It was the more efficient thing to do." There was another reason Rockstar bought Angel Studios, as it turned out. As King said, Sam Houser wanted Rockstar to have its own proprietary engine rather than using Criterion's renderware on the Grand Theft Auto series. Rockstar liked the Angel game engine and felt that it could turn into something that the studio could work with.
Y nosotros teníamos nuestro propio game engine. En esa época muy poquitos estudios lo tenían porque no era una cosa que se vendía así mucho. Conseguía mucho así porque ellos conseguía gente con mucha pasión.
Take-Two Interactive announced in November of 2002 that it had acquired Angel Studios. With that purchase came all of Angel's technologies, 125 employees including management. It also, through later negotiations, came up with Red Dead Revolver, an opportunity for Rockstar to delve into the Western world, and the game that the Houser brothers have had their eye on since day one. Dan Houser said to IGN, "We agreed to use some of their expertise and our expertise and evolve it into Midnight Club, whilst at the same time doing Smuggler's Run. We got on very well with the guys and it seemed to be a good cultural marriage in that we brought different things to the table and we liked working with each other." Shortly after the purchase happened, Okamoto left Capcom. Since this happened and Rockstar owning Angel made it more complicated to develop, Capcom saw no point in continuing it once he was gone. All the work that the two parties had been doing before the acquisition was handed over to Rockstar, and the team at Angel was allowed to keep working on it, but Capcom retained publishing rights in Japan. King told Polygon they'd been working with Capcom for 4 years on this thing, and apparently really creative people from Capcom were on it. But apparently every year, the whole story, design, whatever changed. So they never got anywhere. And Sam's like, "Look, do we want it? It comes with a deal." And I'm like, yes. Dan Houser said to IGN, Capcom were prepared to walk away from it. So we said we'd finish it, and all they ever wanted was rights to publish it in Japan if we ever did finish it, which they never thought it could be. Angel Studios was now Rockstar San Diego. It had a new logo and a new deadline. It was time to get Red Dead Revolver done and finally end the development nightmare that the game had been in for years. In August of 2003, 9 months after Rockstar acquired Angel Studios, Capcom announced that it was canceling Red Dead Revolver. Publicly, the game seemed dead, but it wasn't really. Yasuda, on a 2003 interview on his blog, said, "I didn't go back to Japan for another month. The Americans on the development didn't know the project had been cancelled, you see. They were still continuing to work at it vigorously, and I was friends with all the graphic artists. So as wrong as it was, I couldn't face them and tell them the truth. I think they knew something was up, though. When I returned, Okamoto told me, 'I'm sorry how things turned out. I know you did your best.' When I went back to Capcom, everyone expressed their sympathies. For the first time, I realized everyone back at Capcom Japan had been rooting for and looking forward to Red Dead Revolver. I was really surprised. The thing I look back with happiness about Red Dead Revolver was the staff I really enjoyed working with. They would tell me with confidence how good the game was going to be. Darren Vader, the art director at Angel Studios, really respected me as an artist. He actually quit the project he had been working on midway to join Red Dead Revolver and work with me. The development took a huge upturn in quality after that. I'm very thankful for that encounter and others like it which I had there." Now being off the project, Yasuda had returned to Japan. In 2018, he told Japanese documentary outlet Toko Toko that he didn't want to go to the United States in the first place. He quit Capcom and took a decade off the industry to do contract work after he got back home.
後にレッドデッドリボルバーというタイトルになるんですけども、それを開発するためにアメリカに行きました。本当は全然やりたくなくて、どうしても単影ガンダムで自由な空気を吸いすぎたし、自由なことをさせてもらったんで、こうしていたエンジェルスタジオという会社がロックスター社に買収されることとなり、もうそこから手をつけることができない立場になって日本に帰国。帰ってきてからはカプコンを辞めて東京に来たと思います。誰に言うでもなくブログで発表して、そのまま引っ越し業者を呼んで、そのまま東京に来ました。あと僕フリーになってから非常にこのゲームというものが嫌いになってしまってですね、それは多分アメリカ時代の開発が影響を及ぼしていると思うんですけども、それが15年も経つとですね、もうだいぶ忘れてしまってですね。
4 months after Capcom's cancellation, Rockstar re-announced the game, but behind the scenes, Rockstar San Diego had been working on it the whole time. Spilkin told Polygon, "I mean, I guess legally and technically it was cancelled, but really it was handed over to Rockstar. As far as I understood, the cancellation was basically a formality when it happened. It was really more of a negotiated transfer, and development wasn't ever stopped completely. Rockstar didn't really want a whole dev team at their new studio making a game for someone else, and Capcom understood that it was not ideal to have another publisher developing a game for them. Part of Red Dead Revolver being a Rockstar property meant stripping it of some of its weird Capcom aspects. Bader said, Rockstar's like, this is not Rockstar. We don't want to have this big Frankenstein guy in a dress. That's just too freaking weird.
Then we sort of got rid of some of the wackier characters, and then we sort of looked at the levels, and it was like, let's do what we can with the level that we've got in terms of like gameplay. Right?
King reflected this, adding that although he really liked Capcom's more fantastical ideas, they didn't make much sense for the game billing itself as a homage to Western films and directors. Jamie King said to IGN in a 2004 interview, Rockstar provided focus to the project, while giving the Rockstar San Diego development team creative ownership of the title. Once all of us began working together on Red Dead Revolver, it became clear that there was common ground as to what we wanted the Western game to be. This agreement between developer and publisher was what the game really needed. We wanted to make sure and remain true to the idealized Western traditions, so our initial concerns were implementing a dueling system for outlaws to square off, changing the character arc to reflect the time period, and to provide an overall package and interface that brings players back to the days in the untamed frontier.
Where it's like, look, you can shoot and the limbs do that. And we just come off Max Payne, so it's like, let's tie that into a multiplier. Let's create, bullet time and have the dueling. And the whole, you got to get the gun out.
Akamoto, on the contrary, said, I'm not exactly sure where you heard they cut Capcom's ideas, but that is completely wrong. The Red Dead Revolver that actually came out is basically more or less unchanged from what we made. We had gotten the game pretty much most of the way to the end of development. What you see is basically what we had. The biggest obstacle Rockstar San Diego had in front of it was simply getting the game out the door. When King showed up in San Diego, he said the game was in pieces, and that those parts needed to be stitched together into a cohesive game. He also said that Sam Houser didn't give him a lot of time to do it. King said, Sam's like, you got 9 months. You gotta get it out in 9 months.
Capcom have been working on it for 4 years with Angel Studios. When we acquired them, it just came with it. And Sam said, you gotta get the game out in 9 months. You got 9 months.
In a 2010 IGN interview, Dan Houser said, our focus was to get the thing done and to get it out to a level that we thought was worthy of coming out. We knew it wasn't going to be completely designed the way we would have done it if we were doing it from scratch, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't some good ideas that couldn't be made into something fun and interesting in its own right. It was a fun challenge. We reverse engineered some things and left some things as they were, but we came at it from a very base level. From the gameplay, it's still fun running around and shooting a gun. It looked nice, and the shooting mechanic, which is something we stuck close to in Red Dead Redemption, was something that was interesting and made the core activity in the game. Red Dead Revolver had a lot of game built, but it was all in pieces. It had a lot of story, but it didn't have a complete script, for example. Part of King's job was bringing all these pieces together into something the studio could publish.
And it was sort of a story, but it wasn't. So that actually, I love Revolver because it was a great experience where we came over from New York and we really sat down and went through, all right, here's the storyline.
Spilkin said it was as hard a crunch as Rockstar gets, which it gets pretty crunchy. But it was a good crunch because we were all so happy. Everyone was so happy that, wow, we're going to finish the game and ship it. According to developers that Polygon had talked to, they said this crunch was in part an effort to get the game out of the way, and that Rockstar headquarters wasn't simply interested in having Red Dead Revolver under its belt. But on the contrary, the publisher was excited to see what it could do next, and how it could bring its open world pedigree to the Wild West setting. After about 5 years of development, and over the course of that time going through differing philosophies with Capcom, the sale of Angel Studios, and having Rockstar take the reins, Red Dead Revolver finally came out on May 4th, 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Spilkin said to Polygon, I think we were all really proud of it. Any game you ship, there's always something that you leave on the cutting floor, that you wish you could have done or wish you could have added or changed. If we started differently, we would have made a better game, but we were all proud of the game we made. For the wider Rockstar organization, King told Polygon he remembered some being frustrated that Red Dead Revolver wasn't getting high review scores, as well as some disappointment from the Rockstar fan base that the game wasn't as open world compared to Grand Theft Auto. But that didn't matter to him. The team did its best with what it had, he says, and besides, he's still really proud of the game.
Everyone wanted, as soon as GTA 3 came out, every game that we made had to be like GTA 3. So everyone was already upset that it wasn't open world, but there was no way we were going to make it open world. And it was about get it finished, ship it, it should be released.
Dan Houser said to IGN, "It was an odd way of working and not one you'd normally do, but it was good business to get it done, and it was good for the transition of the studio to become a Rockstar studio to get it done, and it made sense at the time and we were pleased with the results. Is it what we do from day one? No. But were we pleased with where we got it? Absolutely. I think it was a cool game." Diego Angel finally left the studio in 2005 after 20 years as its head. Diego Angel said to Polygon, "I had a wonderful life those 20 years. It came out of nowhere," he says. "I remember people used to ask me, Diego, you put this thing together, you got it going, you wrote to this point and everything. Was this your business plan? I never had a business plan. They say, but what was your vision? I say, no, it's just be alert, know what's going on, and know when to get in."
Pues vendí la compañía, la vendí bien y yo creo que ya dije, bueno, hasta aquí llegamos y pues yo no me voy a quedar pues el resto de mi vida, quería otras experiencias.
With Red Dead Revolver finally published, after many thought the game would never see the light of day, Rockstar would now use the framework from this game to venture even further into the Western genre and to set the stage for the development of Red Dead Redemption.
Give it to them. It never was about the money.